He found her surrounded by wolves. Her stepmother left her to die in the cold, until a powerful undercover man saved her. Together they became the deadliest duo in the West. The winter wind screamed across the Wyoming territory, driving snow over the empty plains and swallowing every trace of the road behind Mona Carter. At 29, she had survived hardship, broken promises, and years of cruelty inside her own home. Yet on that brutal evening, standing alone beside a frozen creek with darkness closing around her, she finally believed her luck had run out. Only 3 days earlier, her stepmother had smiled at her across the dinner table. Mona had learned long ago that kindness from that woman usually meant trouble. Since the death of Mona's father, the ranch had changed. Laughter disappeared, warmth disappeared. Her stepmother controlled every decision and treated Mona less like family and more like an unwanted burden. Then came the accusation. Money had gone missing from a lockbox. Before Mona could defend herself, her stepmother claimed she had stolen it. The story spread through town with alarming speed. By the following morning, people believed Mona had robbed her own family. Her stepmother offered a solution. She told Mona they would leave quietly before the sheriff became involved. She promised to help her start over somewhere else. Mona agreed. They rode into the mountains together beneath a gray sky heavy with snow. The betrayal came before sunset. While Mona checked a wagon wheel near a narrow trail, her stepmother climbed onto her horse and rode away. At first, Mona thought she was joking. Then she heard the woman's final words carried by the wind. "No one will come looking for you." The horse disappeared into the snowfall. Mona tried to follow on foot, but the storm grew worse. She slipped on ice, injured her ankle, and wandered for hours through drifts. By nightfall, she was lost. Now she sat beside the frozen creek. Her fingers felt numb, her eyelids grew heavy. Every breath burned her lungs. That was when she heard the howl. One voice became several, several became many. Across the snow-covered hills, shadows moved. A pack of wolves emerged from the storm. Their gray shapes circled slowly. Hunger glimmered in their eyes. Mona pulled her revolver and checked the cylinder. She had only a few rounds left. "Figures," she muttered. The wolves crept closer. Mona raised the weapon, but her arm trembled from cold and exhaustion. She knew she could scare a few away. Deep down, however, she understood the truth. The storm had already beaten her. She remembered her father teaching her to ride. She remembered dreams of owning land and building a life that belonged to her. Snow gathered on her shoulders. The wolves tightened their circle. Then another sound cut through the wind, hoofbeats. At first, Mona thought she imagined them. The rhythm grew louder. A dark rider emerged from the swirling snow, mounted on a powerful horse. He moved with unusual calm, as though neither the storm nor the wolves concerned him. The stranger guided his horse between Mona and the pack. Instead of charging recklessly, he used patience. He kept his mount steady while raising a torch from his saddle gear. The sudden light made several wolves retreat. After a tense standoff, the pack slowly withdrew into the darkness. Mona tried to stand. The world tilted. She collapsed. The last thing she saw was the stranger kneeling beside her. When she opened her eyes again, sunlight filtered through a cabin window. A fire crackled nearby. The room smelled of pine wood and coffee. "You're alive," a voice said. Mona turned her head. The stranger sat at a rough wooden table. He looked to be in his 30s, broad-shouldered and far too composed for a man living alone in the wilderness. "Where am I?" she asked. "My cabin. Why, you were freezing to death." Over the next several days, fever came and went. Whenever Mona woke, she found the stranger nearby. He prepared meals, changed bandages, and kept the fire burning through the night. Eventually, she learned his name. Elias Reed. According to him, he bought cattle and traveled frequently for business. Mona did not believe the entire story. Little details kept drawing her attention. His speech sounded more educated than most ranchers. Maps covered one wall. A telegraph key sat on a desk in the corner. Most curious of all, Elias never asked for payment. "What do you want?" Mona asked one evening. Elias looked up from a ledger. "For helping me," she said. "Nothing. No one does something for nothing. Maybe they should." The answer irritated her because she could not tell whether he was serious. As her strength returned, she remained cautious. Years of betrayal had taught her not to trust easily. She slept with her revolver within reach and watched every movement. Yet Elias never pressured her. He never demanded explanations. He simply treated her with respect. One afternoon, while snow drifted outside the cabin, Mona announced she was leaving the following morning. Elias nodded once. "If that's what you want." No argument, no attempt to stop her. That night, shortly after supper, a clicking sound broke the silence, the telegraph machine. Elias crossed the room immediately. A message arrived in short bursts. Mona watched his face as he translated the code. His expression changed. The easy calm vanished. His eyes sharpened with sudden focus. For several long moments he stared at the paper in his hand. Then he folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "What happened?" Mona asked. Elias hesitated. "It's business." She knew instantly he was hiding something. The quiet rancher who rescued her from the wolves was not merely a cattle buyer. The storm had delivered her into the path of a man carrying dangerous secrets, and as the wind rattled the cabin walls outside, Mona realized her life was about to change forever. Morning arrived beneath clear skies for the first time in days. Mona could not stop thinking about the telegram Elias had received the previous night. The calm rancher seemed different now, watchful, guarded, and strangely distant. During breakfast, she noticed him studying maps marked with routes, towns, and rail lines. When she finally demanded the truth, Elias set down his coffee and looked directly at her. "What I tell you stays here." She nodded once. "Then speak." He agreed quietly and began revealing pieces of a life he had hidden from nearly everyone he had ever met before this day. For years, Elias had worked undercover for federal investigators tracking powerful businessmen who cheated settlers across several territories. They forged deeds, manipulated land records, bribed officials, and forced honest families from their property. Because the operation reached into multiple towns, the government needed proof before making arrests. Elias had spent years gathering evidence while pretending to be an ordinary cattle buyer. Mona listened carefully. Suddenly, the telegraph machine, the coded notes, and the lonely cabin made sense. Yet she still intended to leave. His mission was not her concern, she insisted. At least that was what she told herself then. However, fate intervened before she could ride away. Later that afternoon, Elias received another message identifying one of the network's local partners. The name struck Mona like lightning. It belonged to a businessman who had worked closely with her stepmother years earlier. He had helped handle legal papers after her father's death. Mona suddenly remembered signatures she never understood and meetings she had been forbidden to attend. Questions she buried long ago resurfaced. Perhaps her family's ruin had never been an accident. Perhaps someone had planned it from the beginning. That possibility changed everything for her that day entirely indeed. That evening, Mona made a decision. Instead of leaving, she offered to help. Elias refused at first. The work was dangerous and required patience. Mona answered that surviving her stepmother had taught her both. After several minutes, he accepted. Their partnership began modestly. They traveled to nearby towns, gathered public records, and spoke with settlers who had lost land under suspicious circumstances. Mona possessed a gift for noticing details others missed. Elias excelled at connecting scattered facts. Together, they uncovered patterns hidden for years beneath fear and silence. The investigation slowly gained momentum across the territory each week thereafter steadily. Weeks passed, and winter gradually loosened its grip. During their travels, Mona and Elias learned to trust each other. Around campfires, they exchanged stories while coffee cooled beside glowing embers. Mona revealed memories of her father teaching her to track animals across open country. She admitted how deeply the years of manipulation had wounded her confidence. Elias listened without interruption or judgment. In return, he shared fragments of his own past. He spoke of family members lost to illness and of long assignments that forced him to live under false names. Neither noticed how much they had begun relying upon. Their efforts soon produced results. In one town, they discovered evidence that widows had been pressured into selling property far below its value. In another, they found records altered after midnight by a clerk receiving secret payments. Elias documented every detail carefully. Mona earned a reputation for asking questions that exposed contradictions. People began whispering about a mysterious pair traveling the frontier. Some called them troublemakers, others called them heroes. Neither title mattered much. What mattered was helping honest families recover pieces of the lives stolen from them. The work gave Mona purpose she had not felt in many years. As spring approached, the partnership deepened beyond work. One evening, they stopped atop a ridge overlooking miles of golden grassland. The setting sun painted the horizon with bands of orange and crimson. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Elias admitted that meeting her had changed something inside him. Most people he encountered only knew his disguises. Mona knew his flaws. The confession unsettled her more than any danger. She stared toward the distant hills and shook her head slowly. "I am too broken to love anybody," she said. Elias smiled gently. "Then let me love you gently," he replied softly. The words lingered with Mona long after the conversation ended. She offered no response that night, yet something inside her began to shift. For years, she had measured every relationship by the pain it might cause. Elias asked for nothing except honesty. As months passed, their trust strengthened further. Together, they secured documents proving that multiple land transfers had been fraudulent. Several families regained property and livelihoods once thought lost forever. Grateful settlers offered meals, lodging, and thanks. Mona accepted awkwardly but secretly treasured every word. Each victory restored confidence she believed gone forever from her heart and mind alike. Their biggest breakthrough arrived unexpectedly in early summer. Hidden within a collection of business correspondence, Elias discovered references to a final operation involving forged ownership claims across several counties. The letters pointed toward the mastermind coordinating everything behind the scenes. For days, they followed clues, compared records, and verified names. When the truth finally emerged, Mona felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The network connected directly to associates of her stepmother. Financial trails, correspondence, and witness accounts all pointed the same direction. The woman who abandoned her in the snow had been involved far longer than Mona imagined possible. As twilight settled over their camp that evening, neither spoke for a long time. The investigation had become personal in ways neither expected. Mona stared into the fire knowing a reckoning awaited her. Elias understood the burden without needing explanation. At last, he unfolded a map and marked the town where her past had begun. They would return there soon. Not for revenge, but for truth. Beyond the circle of firelight, the frontier stretched endlessly ahead. Somewhere beyond those dark miles, answers waited. Together, they prepared to face them. Neither realized the choices ahead would change their lives forever again. The journey back to Mona's hometown felt longer than any ride she had ever taken. Every mile carried memories she had spent years trying to bury. The familiar hills appeared first, followed by weathered fences and distant rooftops. When the town finally came into view, Mona felt her stomach tighten. Nothing seemed quite the same. Buildings had aged. New businesses stood where old ones once operated, yet the place still held the shadows of her past. Beside her, Elias remained silent, sensing that words would not help. Some roads had to be traveled with courage alone and faith. News traveled quickly across frontier towns. By the time Mona and Elias arrived, rumors had already spread about the pair who had exposed dishonest businessmen throughout the territory. Curious faces watched from storefronts and porches. Some townspeople recognized Mona immediately. Years earlier, many had believed the accusations against her. They had accepted the story that she stole money and disappeared. Now she returned with confidence in her stride and evidence in her saddlebags. The whispers that followed her sounded different from those she remembered. Doubt had replaced certainty. For the first time, people questioned the version of events they had once accepted. Mona's stepmother still lived in the large house that had once belonged to her father. Seeing it again stirred emotions she could barely describe. Anger lingered beneath the surface, but it no longer controlled her. The years had changed her. She was no longer the frightened young woman abandoned in a snowstorm. Elias reminded her that the goal was not revenge. Their purpose was truth. Together, they spent several days meeting witnesses, reviewing records, and organizing evidence. Every document strengthened the same conclusion. Fraud, deception, and manipulation had shaped nearly every decision made after her father's death for years. The confrontation occurred during a public meeting attended by townspeople, merchants, and local officials. Mona entered the hall with Elias at her side. Conversations faded into silence. Her stepmother sat near the front, wearing the same confident expression Mona remembered. For a moment, the older woman appeared amused by her return. Then Elias presented the evidence. One document led to another. Witnesses described transactions. Financial records revealed hidden payments. Correspondence connected names previously thought unrelated. The room gradually transformed from skeptical curiosity into stunned disbelief. Each fact stripped away another layer of lies. Soon the truth stood exposed for everyone to see. Mona's stepmother attempted to defend herself. She blamed others. She denied responsibility. She insisted that every accusation was a misunderstanding. Yet the evidence was overwhelming. For years, she had benefited from schemes that deprived families of property and opportunity. More painful than the financial crimes was the revelation of her personal betrayal. Witnesses confirmed that she had intentionally spread false stories about Mona after arranging circumstances designed to force her away. The room fell silent as the full truth emerged. People who once doubted Mona now understood how deeply she had been wronged by someone she trusted. When the meeting ended, many expected Mona to celebrate. Others expected anger. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Relief. For years, she had carried a burden created by another person's lies. Now that burden finally lifted. Standing outside beneath the afternoon sun, she realized she no longer needed approval from those who had judged her unfairly. Their opinions had once defined her world. They no longer held that power. Elias joined her near the steps. Neither spoke for several moments. The silence felt peaceful rather than uncomfortable. Mona understood that victory was not defeating her stepmother. Victory was reclaiming herself completely. A week later, another message arrived through the telegraph office. Elias read it carefully before folding the paper. Mona recognized the expression immediately. His undercover mission had officially ended. The investigation was complete. The government offered him a prestigious position back east, one that promised security, influence, and recognition. Friends in Washington strongly encouraged him to accept. Anyone else would have considered the decision obvious, yet Elias seemed uncertain. For years, his purpose had been defined by assignments and responsibilities. Now those obligations were ending. For the first time in a long while, he faced a choice shaped entirely by his own heart. Mona tried to convince herself that his decision did not matter. She focused on helping local families settle property disputes and rebuild trust within the community. Yet every conversation with Elias felt more precious than the last. The possibility of losing him weighed heavily on her thoughts. One evening, she rode alone to a hill overlooking the valley. The sunset painted the landscape with warm colors. A familiar sound behind her announced another horse approaching. Elias dismounted and joined her. After a long pause, he admitted that wealth and status no longer seemed as important as they once had. His priorities had changed completely. Mona lowered her gaze. Part of her still feared disappointment. She had spent years protecting herself from loss. Elias gently took her hand. He told her that surviving hardship did not make her broken. It proved her strength. He reminded her of every family she had helped, every injustice she had challenged, and every life she had improved. Then he spoke the words she had secretly hoped to hear. He was staying, not because he lacked opportunities elsewhere, but because the future he wanted existed beside her. Tears filled Mona's eyes. This time she did not hide them from him. A year later, their ranch stood among the most respected properties in the region. Travelers often stopped seeking advice, assistance, or simply a friendly welcome. Mona and Elias worked side by side, helping neighbors resolve disputes and protecting communities through wisdom rather than force. Stories about their adventures spread across the West, growing larger with every retelling. On a snowy evening, Mona stepped outside and listened to wolves howling in distant mountains. The sound no longer frightened her. Elias joined her beneath the starlit sky. Together they watched the horizon, grateful for the life they had built. The winter meant to destroy her had become the season that gave her everything.